Living on the Isle of Man, in the middle of the Irish Sea, Mark has been continually inspired by the rugged, windswept landscapes and the rich history of the island. Using digital photography techniques enables Mark to capture images and imbue them with a sense of nostalgia, often faded, almost detached, inviting the viewer to sense an image which feels like it may be from the distant past. A career in horticulture has seen Mark working outdoors for over 30 years. This connection to the natural world around him becomes obvious as he captures that which he is passionate about. Trees, flowers, glens, and hillsides, bathed in pale summer sun or beaten by relentless cascading rain, such vital elements for inspiration. Welcome, Mark.
Thank you for the invite, Paul. I'm pleased to be here.
Yeah, thanks for coming on the show. So did I miss anything with the intro? Are you up to anything new?
Not really. I think you got it all there, really, Paul. Just really here to have a look at a few pictures and a bit of a chat about them.
Yeah, when did you start taking pictures?
How did you get? Probably a long time ago. We started at secondary school. There was a fledgling photography group of about 5 students, an enthusiastic teacher. So that, I reckon that was probably about 1980. And we started with old cameras and handheld light meters. But, you know, when you've got a good teacher and they instill a bit of enthusiasm into you, it just becomes a passion. So it's quite a long time, really, but it's been through a variety of cameras, from, you know, old cameras and handheld light meters, SLRs, DSLRs, Polaroids, you know, all sorts of cameras, really.
You know, it seems that I run into a lot of, I find artists online the artists online that I find are inevitably from, you know, seem to be from your part of the world. Do you feel like there's an education system that really supports, you know, the arts?
I just think, yeah, maybe the UK is just a creative place. I don't know. There's certainly a lot of interest, and there's certainly when I was at school, there was always a push for people to get involved with the arts and different branches of the arts as well. I think, you know, there's also, you know, lots of galleries, lots of resources. So it's quite a popular thing. And I think it also has so many branches, and it takes people in a lot of different routes as well.
Okay. So, I mean, have you been, you had a show at can you tell me a little bit about the Culture Vannin show in the institution?
Yeah.
It seems like okay. First, you live on the Isle of Man, and it's kind of its own sort of little world, it seems to me, which I find pretty interesting and kind of. I mean, the population is what, roughly 90,000?
Yeah, I don't think it's any more than that. It's actually, if you looked on a map, it's in the middle of the Irish Sea. It's about 30 miles long by 11 miles wide. And I think I'd said before, really, for a long time, it was like a time capsule because it's an island. Not a lot of ingoing traffic, not a lot of outgoing traffic. So customs, traditions, stories, that type of thing remain very much intact within the island. And there's an organisation, Culture Vannin, and they promote a lot of Manx history, Manx folklore. They preserve it. They do a really good job of keeping it going with music, the arts, photography, poetry. So they came across some of my photographs on Flickr. They liked the style of them, and we got together to produce 40 images to illustrate various aspects of Manx folklore and folk tales, and we put them together in an exhibition last year, which went down really well. It was, I say, they were looking for somebody that was kind of giving something a little bit different on the photography side, not just your normal record pictures, your straight shots. They wanted something with a little bit of atmosphere, because some of the stories, the folklore stories, are a little bit dark. You know, they're not, some of them are not very pretty stories. So they wanted something a little bit atmospheric with a little hint of darkness to illustrate them. And I think we worked together and produced a very good final result. There's some very knowledgeable people who work for Culture Vannin, and they know the culture and the history of the Isle of Man inside out. So they provided the words, they provided the stories, and I just matched up the image to what they provided me with.
Would you have an idea? I mean, did you have a pretty good idea of what you wanted for each story before you went out to, you know, find an image, or was there?
It was a bit tricky. Some of the stories, a lot of them are about mythical beasts. So, for example, they might be about a Finoddery. Now, this is a creature which appears in Irish and Scottish, you know, folklore and Manx folklore. But as they're sort of mythical creatures, nobody knows what they look like. There's no reference point. So the difficulty was trying to dream up something or think of something that might be appropriate to fit the story. But it was a challenge. And as I say, quite often, it would end up just being a kind of atmospheric image, something a little bit mysterious to try and suit the story.
And Manx, is that the term used to describe, or is that the language, or is that the culture as a whole, or the people that originally, you know, inhabited the island?
Yeah, it's all of those things, really. It's
okay.
I'm actually Manx. There's not many Manx people in the world, really. There's a few thousand on the Isle of Man, a few spread around the world. But anybody born here with sort of Manx parentage are classed as Manx. The language, the old Gaelic, is Manx. So it applies to a lot of things culturally on the Isle of Man. And it's very unique as well, quite a unique and distinct culture. Although I think I've explained before, it has its similarities with the Irish and the Welsh and the Scottish Gaelic communities. But again, because it's a small island, it can be quite distinct.
And then there's also some Scandinavian influence at one point.
Yes, the island, roughly just over 1,000 years ago, was invaded by Vikings, as was a lot of Western Scotland and Ireland, and they eventually took over the Isle of Man. They intermingled with the existing Celts. And what's nice is when you live here, I could go a couple of miles to a local church, and inside that church there'll be a lot of original hand-carved Viking crosses. And you can actually go in and see them, touch them if you want to. They're original pieces from 1,000 years ago, that when the Vikings were here, they made the mark, they carved crosses, they erected them around the place. And it's quite incredible to see them. They left quite a distinct mark on the island.
You were lucky to get rid of them.
I don't think we did.
Oh. There's
they stayed.
In South Dakota, there's a lot of Scandinavians settled here. So
wow.
We're still here. Yeah, no, there's a 5,000-year-old tomb that I ran across online somewhere on the island.
Yes.
That sounds pretty, I mean, which is remarkable.
Yeah, I mean, there's Neolithic burial grounds. There's castles that, you know, they go back well over 1,000 years. So for a small place, there's a lot of things to see. There's a lot of culture and history wherever you turn over here. As I say, it's had a checkered history with battles and invasions. But the remnants, like I say, there's some fantastic castles over here. And as I say, Neolithic tombs, there's burial grounds, there's old remains of Celtic roundhouses. So there's quite a lot of things you can see. Okay,
so Culture Vannin found your work online. You put a show together, and it was well received. It looks like the resulting images were beautiful. How about if we look at some photographs now?
Yeah, that'd be good.
Is there any place you'd like to start, or is this okay?
Start wherever you like. There's quite a mixture.
Yeah.
There's no logical order to my photographs on my Instagram account. It's just as I put them on, really.
If I go to the Flickr, is there a place where we can find the images from the show?
I haven't got a designated place for them. Culture Vannin, if you actually go on their website, they have all the 40 images connected together
Okay.
with the folklore stories, which is quite an important part of it, really. I say
Hey,
mine are fairly randomized images, and it's spread over a long time as well, because when we got together for the Culture Vannin exhibition, it was probably over 2 years ago, and it took quite a long time to get all those images together and compiled. But as I say, I've got an Instagram account, I've got a Flickr account, but say there's no logical order to them. I've just a display, really.
Okay, I think I found. Would it be worth? Should I look for see if I can find the images?
You can do, yeah.
I actually I had a hard time. I found a page for the show. I can cut this out too, but I'm not finding the images. Maybe you can help me. Let's see.
Yeah, I know Culture Bannon have a website. If you go onto their website and then in their search box, if you put Whispering in the Trees, which was the name of the exhibition, it should bring it up.
Oh, okay. Let's see. Culturevannon.im.
Yeah.
Search. Sorry about this. Did it?
No, it took me a while to find it. I say, yeah.
Here we go. I think I've got it.
Yeah, Whispering in the Trees was the exhibition title.
Okay. Share screen. Mm-hmm. Let's see. Nope, that's not it. Oh no. Sorry, Mark.
No, it's okay. No, it wasn't easy to find. Their website has so much information about various things that you really have to kind of hunt for it. But I think went on there. Whispering in the Trees was the
got it.
Yeah, that was the exhibition title. And that, I say, I don't know all of the individual stories with each picture, but the Culture Vannin website will give you an in-depth piece of folklore with each picture.
Okay, yeah, I like the way you use texture and the tone of the painting really.
Yeah, I try and make them feel old or look old. There's a lot of them, not all of them, but a lot of them in sort of sepia tones, blacks and whites, misty looking pictures. As you say, with a lot of texture. I like to add texture to give it that feeling like it could have been taken 100 years ago.
Yeah, what I find interesting is they almost look like digital scans of existing images or photographs. Like they're a digital record of an actual object that exists. Yeah. I mean, I suppose you printed them off for for the show, but was the show entirely online? I guess that's not a given anymore. Whether the show was with COVID and everything.
Yeah, we connected with a local gallery in one of the villages, and it's quite a nice sizable gallery. We got all the 40 images presented in there, and we ran it. We originally ran the show early last year as coronavirus struck, so we got about 2 days of exhibition before we had to lock down. But then we reran it again later in the year. So the exhibition itself was up and running for quite a while, and then I say now that the online presence is on the Culture Vannin website.
So are you guys kind of locked down over there, or are you free to kind of come and go as you please?
Well, we had a couple of small lockdowns, but for the most part of last year, pretty much all year, there was no lockdown. We lived life as normal with no masks or anything like that.
Okay.
We were very lucky because it is a small island. We could monitor who came in and out, so we lived life pretty much as normal, and it is pretty normal now. We're very lucky.
Yeah, can you tell me a little bit about how you get some of these effects? If it's not top secret,
Or it could be a little bit top secret, but I'll give you a few pointers. There's like in this picture, if I recall, I think it's called a taru ushti, which is Manx for it's like a water spirit or a water buffalo. And in this, I've sort of used like composite images. I've tried to add texture, tried to add a little bit of light and color to suggest there's something supernatural living in the water, which is what the historical taru ushti would do. But yeah, it's adding in. Say in this case, we've added in ethereal light. I've changed the tones and make it look a little bit gloomy to make it look like it was again an old picture, which is the kind of result I'm going for, really.
Then the feeling, they're old pictures, but it's not always a sentimental feeling you get. Sometimes it's, I suppose if a lot of the stories are about creatures of some sort, you get the feeling that something might be lurking beyond the frame.
There was, oh yes, some of the pictures, they were, for instance, child abducted from a farm field by fairies. Once upon a time, people here were very superstitious about, that type of thing. Creatures living under bridges, phynoderies, which are strange creatures which roam the countryside. This one that you're showing now, Manannan's cloak. Once upon a time, they used to think Manannan, was the ruler of the kingdom of man, and he was a very mysterious being, and if any invaders appeared, they'd bring down a cloak or low cloud to cover the island to protect it from invasion. So there's quite a mix of, as I say, a lot of stories behind some of these pictures.
Oh yeah, you have some interesting Christmas traditions as well. Discovered.
Yes, I think there's one. I can't remember the one associated with this, but again, the traditional superstitious. There's a lot of things. Say in the old days, people truly believed in certain plants you couldn't cut down, certain things you couldn't do on certain days. So say up until quite recently, but again, because it's probably a small island, very superstitious.
I find this one particularly disturbing. What about the, in a good way?
I like that. That actually, Footsteps in the Snow. Now, that was based on a true story by an elderly man who lived a couple of miles away from here. And he used to walk in the hills. And the story he relayed was he'd been up in the snow, in the trees, walking, and he'd seen a set of tiny footprints which he followed, and there was nobody in sight at all, and he attributed it to being something along the lines of a fairy or a spirit of the forest, that type of thing. So, and he put this down as a true story. An old guy called George E. Quayle, and he had a small book, and it's just full of old recollections of farming and hill life and superstitions, and it's just like a little thread to the past, really. But I say the stories I thought were great, and so we just tried to suggest this, a mysterious figure in the trees, perhaps leaving footprints,
And then, a lot of your pictures, you'll use 2 or 3 images together. How do you, what's behind that decision?
I don't know why I started doing it. I enjoy diptychs, triptychs. I often feel you can take a picture and you can add to that picture by putting 1 or 2 other things in. Often things that you wouldn't necessarily be able to photograph together. So it's like a montage. It's like you can put these together to create this part of the story you're trying to convey.
Well, I know it adds to the disoriented or I mean, you really, as a viewer, as a picture, it all holds together, it seems, compositionally, but it adds a little bit of, it makes it difficult to kind of tell where you're standing in relation to the image or the frame.
Yeah.
I think it works well with what you're doing. Oh, this is nice. I don't know if I've seen this one before.
Yes, I can't remember. I think it was some kind of spirit or something along those lines.
Okay.
Again, I like that. To me, it feels like something that might have been taken about the turn of last century.
Right, and the texture would suggest maybe this was sitting in a frame and getting a little bit too much sun for 5 or 6 decades on a
yes, yeah, well, very much a faded photograph. This is how I like to see them. That's like old pictures, as you say, could have been sat somewhere fading in the sun.
Okay, and then, I mean, is there a lot of, do you use a stylus or a pen of some kind?
No.
To maybe blur out some of the...
No, I tend to, there's nothing that detailed, really. So I take the picture, I'll work with it, I'll change the light, change the tone, change the texture, and that's really it. I've never really used a stylus. I know some people do. They use the iPads, they use an art app, and they can really do great work with the stylus, but I'm not that detailed, really.
Yeah, this is another one I've been looking at on and off for a while.
Yes, the Phenodary. This again is one of the mythical beasts, creatures, men, giants. That there used to be a lot of superstition about, and I like this because it's more of a suggestion of a person than an actual person. It's shadowy. It's a larger than life figure with some kind of those strange lights suggestive of eyes around the face. It's a bit of a haunting image, but it's the kind of image I like to do, really. A bit like that one. Yeah.
Okay. And then I assume this is maybe 2 or 3 images in post.
Yeah, again, it's a montage of various images put together, again, to suggest this supernatural, otherworldly sort of place. But again, works fine. It just lends itself to these little pieces of folklore that we've been illustrating, really.
What can you tell me? What I mean, do you use Photoshop to edit your?
No, I'm not a big fan of Photoshop. Sort of basic editing, that type of thing. I tend to use Snapseed or something like that. It's a very flexible tool for editing photographs, but Photoshop I find a little bit complicated. So again, with that kind of image, it's fairly simple from the point of view. It's dark, it's a bit blurry, but that again, this is the ghost child of Lagnakilly, and it's based on a true story of a small child that used to sit on the rocks down the west coast of the island with a lantern, and fishermen would often see this ghost sat on a rock. And again, it would often could mean good fishing, bad fishing, again, whatever the superstition was written into it. But again, another little piece of folklore that we've sort of brought to life, really.
So are there still reports of these spirits being seen throughout the island?
Not that I'm aware of. Again, I think superstition and this type of thing years ago, I think people probably thought they saw a lot of things. People were superstitious, and this picture here again, this is I think if I remember rightly, the piece of folklore was to do with a child that was abducted off a bridge by the thing, the troll, or whatever that lived underneath it. But again, I try and suggest in these pictures, if you look at the little figure, there's no real face on it. It sort of adds to the timelessness of it, the anonymity of it, the age of it, really.
Yeah. It leaves a little bit of interpretation to the viewer.
Yes.
It's nice.
Yeah, city under the sea. And again, not something I could really photograph, but swirling ocean with suggestive lights underneath, you know. Again, it worked well in the context of the piece of folklore it's trying to illustrate, really.
Oh, this is nice.
Yeah, that was
How did you get this shot?
pretty straightforward shot. I was up in the hills. I think, again, I'm trying to remember, it was illustrating one of the upland water sources that they used to attach a lot of importance to. You'd go to a particular spring or a particular well and it would heal certain problems. And I think, if I remember rightly, this was the same kind of thing. But again, it's you know, you just add to it to give it the atmosphere, again, to make it look like it's the part for the folklore story, really.
Okay, the spinning wheel keeps coming up.
Again, you know, the folklore was centered around old people living in thatched cottages with old ways of life, with spinning wheels and open fires, which again, you know, until not too far in the distant past, it's how a lot of people lived over here, really.
I read somewhere that the Isle of Man has the per capita the 5th highest personal income in the world.
Yeah, I think
what's kind of the main economic concern in the Isle of Man?
I think really that has a small financial sector. There's a number of banks located here. There's not a lot of people here. There's a lot of wealthy people retire here because it offers the way of life over here that I think a lot of people used to find it had in England about 30, 40 years ago, which has gone. It's laid back. It's easy going. I wouldn't say it's crime free, but it's not a big place for a lot of crime. It's pretty safe, and I think it sort of attracts people who are quite well off, and that probably filters down, you know. So it's not a bad thing from that perspective, really.
I suppose tourism is tourism a big thing?
Not, yeah, well, the one big event in the Isle of Man is the TT races, the motorcycle races, which it has every year or has had every year. And that's quite a big draw. But yeah, you get a few people they come across. I think because it is a small place, it's got a lot of history. It's got beaches, it's got hills, it's got glens. It's got a lot to see in a small area. So it does do quite well. A lot of people come over just for a few days just to get away from it and tour around, and it's quite a picturesque place. But obviously, with tourism in the UK, you know, it's a small window. You've got a few months, and then we're back to autumn, winter. So it's not as big as it used to be, but I think it's an important part of it.
I could see where, I mean, you know, just after spending a little bit of time online watching some YouTube videos and reading, I sure would like to visit sometime. Man, can you tell me a little bit about he raised on high the staff? I've been looking at this image for quite a while.
I'm trying to remember the whole story behind that, and I can't remember all of it at all. I have a feeling it might have been something to do with an Irish priest. Again, I'd have to read the Culture Vannin website, but again, it was just one of those. It's actually St. Mackle's Church, which is where the story, I think, significantly took place, but I can't remember the exact details of the story.
Well, I mean, when you go out to do photography, I mean, is the countryside just kind of littered with these old chapels and wind band? I mean, how hard do you have to look to find?
You don't have to go far. I mean,
Okay.
there's old chapels, old churches. There's thatched, a handful of thatched cottages. There's, you know, it's on your doorstep. Really, a lot of these things, and I take a great delight in photographing old things. So you don't have to go far to find an old house or an old farm. I love farms, outbuildings, old cottages, Norse crosses, you know, ruins, castles. It's quite we're quite well off in that respect when you think about what there is to see.
All right, and then this image was used for the culture Vannin used this to promote the show. So I was thinking maybe this was an important.
Well, I think that was just the
image.
most photogenic one. It's also one of my favourite pictures, and it's not for any Manx folklore reason. It's a picture I'd taken on a walk around the cliffs and the headlands of the Isle of Man, and that it's sea thrift, and it's nestled in a piece of rock right by the sea. And I like it particularly because of the colours, that teal sky, the faded pink of the flowers. I just think as a picture it works really well for me.
Okay, and you have aqueducts as well?
That actually is
or
connected to a really, really big water wheel.
Okay. Oh, the water wheel.
Yeah, there's one huge water wheel. It's called the Laxey wheel, and it's quite an incredible thing to see. And it was originally used to pump water out of mines, and that aqueduct looking thing is just part of the mechanism. It used to run all the way along, I think, to a pump house, and as the wheel went, it would go back and forth and pump the water out of the mines. The wheel actually looks more impressive than the sort of viaduct thing, but for that purposes, that picture I didn't use it. And that's Peel Castle. That's again another atmospheric place. Fabulous castle, fabulous to visit.
So how these the effects that you get, you know, like this, I mean, the depth of field in your pictures is really confusing, you know, which is one of the things I really enjoy about looking at them. How much of that is software and how much of it is lens?
Well, again, in the likes of that picture, it's 3 images put together.
Right.
Most people, if they go there, they'll just take a picture of it. I took 3 different views and stitched them together, and it doesn't look like that, you know, the castle. But the way I put it, I feel like we're looking inside of it, rather than say people just stand back and take one big picture of it. And I've taken 3 different views and just put them together. And I think it gives, certainly for people who have been there, it gives it quite an unusual aspect and a new way of looking at the castle.
Bit like, yeah, if a cubist was taking photographs. I guess, I think the popping is back.
Little bit.
Maybe we should wrap it up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see. Is there anything else that you'd like to? It's definitely more when I talk. So if there's anything.
Well, I think that was it. We've covered a lot of the exhibition and a lot of the folklore and a lot of the history of the Isle of Man.
Can you tell everybody where to find you on social media? And
yes, I'm not very well represented on social media. I think, as you pointed out, a remarkably small web presence, which is right. But I think the mainstay is Flickr. This is where I think you found me, and I've been on Flickr for 10 years, and I keep it. That's where all the pictures of start off at. And then I ended up a little while ago. I think it was when we started the Whispering in the Trees exhibition. It was advised that I should get an Instagram account just so people can have a look. I think it's a little bit more mainstream than Flickr, and I'm not on Facebook, unfortunately. So the 2 places you'll tend to find me are Flickr and Instagram, and because of that, I've set up a small Etsy shop in the last week or so, purely because I've been getting a lot of requests via culture, Vannin, for people who want to purchase some of the prints that were either in the exhibition or just prints that they've seen on my Instagram account?
Okay. Man, I'm really sorry about the technical problems, but it's been great visiting.
Could be worse.
Yeah.